Well, if you come to join us and you haven't been here before, like the missionaries and some people visiting, we are in the middle of a marriage series. And I understand that it's about time I preach on something to the men, because there's a cooperation of women who are getting together to lynch me in the parking lot if I preach one more message on what a wife should be. Hey, that's just what Ephesians 5 lays out. God dealt with the wives first. I'm only following His order. Please! If I were to ask you today, in what manner or how does Jesus love you? That is, the ways that He has shown it, is showing it, and will show it, how would you answer me? Perhaps even now your mind can create a list of dozens, maybe even hundreds of things if you're given the time, of how Jesus has shown His love towards you, how He is showing His love towards you, and how He will show His love toward you through all eternity. Understanding those ways and manners that Jesus Christ loves you, if you are saved, if you are part of His great church, if you are the bride of Christ, understanding those great ways is exactly what will help every marriage in the room, and specifically will help every man how to love your wife, or these younger men, their future wives. As we've said, we've tried to preach these last messages. 4 of the last 5 messages have been exhaustive looks throughout the main passages in Scripture dealing with wives, with ladies, relating to marriage. And because I fear for my life, it's time to make a transition. And no, I want to give you now the significant passages in the Scripture relating directly to the husband, relating to what a man should be concerning his wife or his future wife. Take your Bibles and turn again to Ephesians chapter 5, where we will start with this message. Ephesians chapter 5. Ephesians chapter 5. Would you please stand as we read the Word of God? The Bible says in Ephesians chapter 5, still here plenty of pages. I will wait for a moment so we can look at God's Word. Ephesians chapter 5, beginning verse 21. Submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, even as Christ is the head of the church, and He is the Savior of the body. Therefore, as the church is subject unto Christ, so let the wives be to their own husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives. And here's where we begin preaching today. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave Himself for it, that He might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of the water by the Word, that He might present it to Himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. That is, look up here for a moment, that is how He is going to present you in eternity, to Himself. That is not in this passage. Certainly it is something that we strive to be, but I'm telling you, this passage is what the groom is making his bride to be. Come that great marriage, remembrance in the sky, when we will be in eternity. You know, really all your strivings in the world cannot make you, what this verse says, without spot, wrinkle, or any such thing. But the blood of Christ is sufficient to make every believer in Christ here perfect, presented as a glorious and beautiful bride come eternity morning. Verse 28, so ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man ever yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of His body, of His flesh, and of His bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined unto his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. This is a great mystery, but I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband. You may be seated. This passage is packed with truth to help husbands in their marriage. Notice again verse number 21 before we plunge specifically into the husbands category. Notice what it says in verse 21, submitting yourselves one to another in the fear of God. You know, we've already commented on this, But right before God gives very clear instructions for the wives to submit and subject themselves to their husbands in everything, God gives a most particular command to both the husband and to the wife in the instruction, submit yourselves one to another. Now think about that. Think about that like you've never heard it before. Now that sounds kind of almost contradictory to the next verse where it's talking about wives submitting to the husband. And how can it be that this passage starts out with both of you submitting to each other? That's a little hard to understand. It would be ludicrous and kind of really strange for you to try to say, well, this is just a mistake or a contradiction in God's Word. Well, that's kind of crazy because God obviously can read and He knows that it's right before this other verse. So it's not a contradiction. There's a harmony here that we need to understand. Verse 21 is a header, like in a newspaper or in a magazine. When you have a heading, you have a big, bold thing, and what comes after it, even for a while, has to do with that big header, that big title. It's a big header here to mutually submit, and it doesn't stop in chapter 5. This applies not only to the roles of husbands and wives right here where we're reading, but if you scan with your eyeballs down through chapter 6, the first couple of verses, it deals with the children and their parents. You scan down a little bit farther and you see that it involves servants or masters and their servants. This is a big header in verse number 21 that applies to the next chapter, the end of that chapter, and half of the next. It's dealing with two people. And in relationship, there are three cases of relationships that I just named to you: husbands and wives, children and their fathers, and servants and their masters. In each case with these two people, there is the authority factor of who is in charge, of who is the head, but then there's also the relation factor of how they are getting along. And this is where verse 21 comes in. That is not a contradiction to the next couple of verses about who's the head of your home in verse 22 through verse 24. In all the cases that I mentioned to you, in those three two-people cases, the authority is warned not to abuse their power, their authority, not to abuse it. The husband is to love and give to his wife in verse 25 of chapter 5. The father in chapter 6 is told not to provoke his children to wrath. And the master is told to do good in chapter 6 and verse number 6 in that relationship between him and his fellow servants. Him doing good doesn't in any way impact his authority. He is still the authority. A father choosing not to provoke his children to wrath doesn't in any way hurt his authority of who's in charge of that home, of who's in charge of those children. It is the idea of mutual submission by way of relationship, in the relationship being a servant to each other. Servant in relationship. So what am I saying about this, submit yourselves? I'm saying to husbands that verse 21 means that your authority of your wife doesn't mean that you're not going to be a loving servant to her in your relationship. A mutual submissive servant. A yielding, peace-seeking kind of husband in your marriage. And a listener to her when she advises you. Your headship doesn't mean that there's not supposed to be mutual submission in verse number 21. In the relationship of the marriage, in the way that you relate to each other. I have a militant fundamentalist marriage book in my office, that in this passage, when it deals with it, it instructs, I feel like it's just right for me to tell you this, it instructs the reader to leave a church that comes to verse number 21 and preaches mutual submission from that verse. So there it is, there's your warning, no one seems to be moving, so we're going to move on. Yet there is an attitude in militant fundamentalism or in conservative Christianity that has an edge that the husband has to kind of beat down his wife, and that there can't be any kind of, in the relationship, any mutual understanding, or especially there can't be any yielding on the part of the husband. Interesting. Yet there it is in the Word of God in verse 21. Right before marriage, it's talking about husbands and wives. At the beginning of last week, I think it was, I was down with Al Dickerson at Maranatha for a little bit. And if some of you, that means nothing to you, but if you know anything, that is a man who walks in his authority. That is a man who is a strong man. And I'll never forget what he said to the fella in front of me last week. He says, "Sometimes my wife sets me straight." Now, nobody would question who's in charge of his home in Al Dickerson's home. But the fact of the matter is, listening, submitting, mutual submission to your wife, fellas, does not question your authority. If that wife is being respectful and loving, and you should welcome that in your relationship. Husbands, consider Jesus Christ our authority, who stooped to wash those disciples' feet. Consider the fact of how big a servant your Lord Jesus is for men. Christ, the great groom, is your example on this submitting of yourselves. Don't run over your wife. Be a servant to her in your relationship, and it will be much easier for her to willingly submit and subject herself in your authority. You be mutually submissive in the relationship, and the authority thing will not, let me just say this, will be much easier for your wife. This mutual submission is deferring and willing love and yielding to each other's preferences and listening to your wife's advice, to her needs, to her concerns. It is really considering her perspective on things. Now, you may not always choose to work out those opinions in decisions. And wives, you need to understand that he is the head. As far as authority and the final word, he is the head, your husband. But husbands, you can always listen. You can always consider, and you can always value and plug in her perspective in your thinking. Your wife should never be able to accurately say of you, he never listens to me. Now notice in verse number 21 at the end it says to do this in the fear of God. This seems to be a direct statement about that you had better, buddy, watch how you relate to your wife because God, the authority, your authority is watching, and you better fear how you treat your wife, and you better fear that you're not being mutually submissive to her in your relationship. Wow. This seems to speak to the verbal, to the emotional, to the physical abuser. I mean, verse 21 is talking to men or women. Women, you better be watching how you're relating to your spouse, God says. Fear him, vengeance is his. And now we jump a little bit and go to verse 25. We see here the main command that is given to husbands. Let's read it again. Look there with your eyes. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. So the first part, let's take it at a chunk. Love your wives even as Christ. Will you say even as Christ with me, please? Even as Christ. Will you wake up the person next to you and say that again? Here we go. Even as Christ. Listen, that is not only the command to do it, but it is the description of how to love your wife. Husbands, even as Christ loved the church. It is a certain way. The word love here is the word agape love, and I'm not going to bore with you with the fact that there are several different words for love in our New Testament. But this word is agape love. You've all seen it. You've seen it on license plates. You've seen a lot of places or organizations named after it. But it's the kind of love that prizes something, that values something, and takes high pleasure in it. So this is kind of love that we are told that Christ had for the church and that husbands have to have for their, or should have for their wives, that prizes them, that highly values them, that takes great pleasure in them. There are two ways as you begin reading verse number 25 that you could take that phrase, even as Christ. You could take it just in a very surface understanding, that he is just saying, husbands, husbands, love your wives because Christ loved his wife, the church. But that's not really what this is saying. It's not just saying you should do it too because he did it. It is saying that little phrase, even as, is giving you the fact that it's giving you a little teaser that for the next 8 verses, he is going to instruct you and describe to you what the proper kind of love, what it looks like, what the description is of how you should love. And listen, fellas, all men, don't you think that you automatically know it? I'll be the one that tells me how to love my wife. I'm the one that wears the pants in the family. I'm the one that sits on the recliner. I hold the remote control in my hand. Ain't nobody going to tell me how to love my woman. Okay, well, don't listen to Tobe Witmer. How about listening to Christ? Okay, from the next 8 verses, he describes how he loves his church, and he is saying, do this like this to your wife. So, hey, Christ, let's listen to him as the great husband. Notice first he gave himself for it. The end of verse 25, he gave himself for it. Here is the gospel love of the cross. He loves you according to the gospel. Philippians 2 is a verse that I often quote and that you know very well, but let's think of it again about the way that he, not just that he loved the church, but the way that he loves all true believers. Listen to it again. Who being in the form of God, this is Jesus, thought it not robbery to be equal with God. That means, that's a confusing phrase. That means that he didn't consider it like a robber who grabs a hold of his loot and won't let go of it. He thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. And being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. We learn something from that about how Christ loved us. The end of verse number 25, he gave himself for it. What does that mean? We learn that Christ, though he had the position and that he sat with his Father in great authority of being God, he didn't grasp hold of it. He didn't keep hold of the position and the visible look of that authority, though he never stopped being God. He did not grasp that position, but took the form of a servant in humility and gave himself in a way that caused him personal pain and personal loss and loss of rights that he could have kept and decided not to give them up in order to gain the love of his wife, you, in salvation. Love your wife this way, husband. Authority that is not demanded, but humility that gives. And that's the picture of Christ. Though he is the one who had the greatest authority, he was willing not to stand in that authority as being the God, equal God. But he instead humbled himself and gave of himself. So let me say that again. Authority that is not demanded, but humility that gives is the way that we can emulate Christ and love our wives. Get a hold of this. Listen to this. Christ's agape love for you that prized you and that valued you was from the position of him being the form of God and equal to God. You say, so what? So what that he loved me from that position? The so what is that being holy God, Christ could never value the sinner through and through for what he found in you to be. You understand? He was holy God. You were an alien, an enemy, an outcast in his sight of being holy God. He could not love you from the perspective of what he saw in you. There's a lot of Southern gospel songs or whatever that have that kind of idea, that false cliche, that lie of a cliche, that he saw something in me and that's why he died on the cross. He didn't see nothing in you. He saw grace in himself. The incredible thing of learning how to love your wife is not doing it because of her performance or because she has to meet up some kind of standard. Jesus didn't do that. He loved you despite anything he saw in you. The greatest point of his amazing love is that he was non-responsive. He didn't see us and then like us and then value us and then give his life for us. He saw us, was repulsed by us, hated our sinfulness, and then decided in great love and totally by grace to prize us and to value us and to die for us despite who we were and, may I just add, who we are. Do you understand that kind of love? It is non-reciprocal. It is reactive. It is active love. It decides to love. It is love from a heart of love and grace. And I say to that, hallelujah, what a Savior. Amen. What a God. Let me say it to you like this, because some of you are just like, okay. Let me say it to you like this. So the car pulls up. We called it Extension when I was in college, but it's basically a ministry for children. I came along because I didn't have anything else to do on a Friday night. And they're sitting in front of that gymnasium out in the middle of Woodruff, South Carolina, in the middle of nowhere. Creek only runs twice a week. They're sitting was Amy Chapman. There she is. I would love to tell you, for instance, that it was love at first sight. But she had these 1980 glasses that were so big that they covered her entire face. I could not even have recognized her if she had taken them off. So when she got rid of those, then the Lord started doing some work or whatever it was. Something was a-moving, I'll tell you that. And when she got rid of those, then I became desperately in love with her. She was beautiful. She still is beautiful. Any man who says amen to that, I'll meet you in the parking lot. Me and John Olinda and Mark Baranowski would be happy to meet you in the parking lot to settle that. I love the fact that she loved children. I saw that in her. I did not know that I was going to have 43 children when I married her, by the way. I noticed that she carried herself in such a way that was very respectful. I noticed that she loved God with all her heart. All these things I saw in her attracted me to her. You know, see, that is a kind of responsive love. That's what I'm talking about. It is a love that I saw her, and I saw things I loved in her, and so I was attracted to her. And so eventually, I walked up to her and I said, "Is you is or is you ain't my baby?" And she says, "I is," and we were. That is not the love of Jesus towards you. He did not see. The Word of God is very, very clear that Romans 1 to Romans 3, that we are very offensive to God. The love that He had towards you was non-performance on your side. Jesus Christ loved you. He's trying to get across in verse number 25 that He gave Himself for you. He laid Himself down for you. He ransomed you. He loved you from a position of great holiness, but He laid Himself down to gain you. That preaches to every husband how to love in this place. Loving your wife doesn't come from a performance thing on her part. You don't love her just when she comes up to a certain standard that you have. I'm glad it doesn't work the other way, because our wives could never love us, by the way. I'm glad that that doesn't work that way. You love her because you decide to. You choose, like Christ, to value her, to respect her, to prize her from your side. See, Jesus' love is an action, not a reaction, and your love for your wife must be the same way. You love her and don't allow her any shortcomings or comparisons to other women, for instance, or changes in her body or your body as time goes on to influence your love. You stoke the fire because you want to love her. You choose to love her. You decide to love her, like Jesus decides one side from this side, and that will make an awful fiery marriage. Praise the Lord. I've told you in earlier sermons about this word gave in verse 25. It is a very special word as spoken by inspiration. It's not the regular word to give that you see other places in your New Testament. It is to ransom yourself, or to lay yourself down, or to exhaust yourself for the sake of another. This is what he's saying in verse 25, that he laid himself down, he spent himself to gain his bride. Men, that is the way we're supposed to love our wives, in a way that ransoms ourselves in love to them. That is sacrificial. It comes at a personal cost. It humbles ourselves to honor them. This is what Jesus did for the church, His bride, for every born-again believer in the place, and it's what you need to do for your wife. A commentary makes a note that I really appreciate. It's actually, if you have a Schofield Bible, it's down in the margins or down in the description, and it says, it makes observation that if you look at verse 25, 26, 27, you see time. You see past tense, that He gave Himself, verse 25. You see present tense, verse 26, He is presently sanctifying you. And you see in verse 27, future tense, He will present us to Himself a glorious church. He loved you in the past, He loves you in the present, and He's going to love you in the future. I like that. It's really neat to see that. I think about the applications of He gave Himself to me as a husband, and to you, all the husbands and the future husbands. You young bucks, you better listen. Listen up. Listen up. You want your marriage to last? You 8, 9, 10-year-olds, you want your marriage to last? You teenage guys, you had better listen tonight, today. It's not tonight. I just preached twice, so I think it's tonight. You want your marriage to last? Understand what it is to give yourself for your wife. So often, we're very selfish men when, this is an example, our wives have worked from dawn to dark, and they're still working and still going around the house and still finishing these things, and there's another load of laundry that needs done, and children have toys, and they're still having iron and straighten up things and get something out of the freezer, all of that, and we just plop down on the couch. Just plop down on the couch. That doesn't seem a lot like what Christ does to expend himself and lay himself down for his wife. Or our wife, for instance, has been hurting, may have some need, and she's been quieter lately. And we don't even notice. Or we do notice and we think it's a benefit. That's a very good joke. Finally, I can listen to my ball game without getting interrupted. Amen, my marriage must be getting better. Hello. She may just need to talk and for you to sit there and listen to her with your eyes actually focused. You may be a husband that your marriage is all about your interests or your preferences or your needs or your hobbies or your sports or whatever. This verse says he gave himself for it, his bride. He gave himself. He gave himself. He gave himself. And by the way, he's still giving himself as he sits at the right hand of the Father interceding for you. He is still giving himself. In the future, he will still give himself to spend forever with you. It's time, husbands, for you to stop being self-centered and to give yourself for your wife. There's danger of dwelling too much on the theology that I taught you in the first or second sermon, where it is true in creation, it is true in marriage, that the focus is on the husband. In the great marriage of Christ and the church, the focus is on him, the groom. However, you ought not dwell too much on that, men. And it ought not be just this matter of take from my wife. Let her worry all about me. No, Jesus, the groom, gave himself. We need to follow his example. Jesus took the pain and the discomfort to do something wonderful for his bride, and we must have that attitude also. I want you to notice there's another way of his love towards his wife. In verse 26, look at the Bible, that he might sanctify and cleanse it with the washing of water by the word. He sanctifies and cleanses his church. This sanctification is presently taking place, and it speaks again to our husbanding, the kind of husband that we should be. I want you to notice that is obvious, because when we get down to verse number 28, he says, so ought men to love their... He's been talking about how you should be a good husband all along by giving you the illustration of how he takes care of his wife. This present sanctifying speaks to a man, a husband, ministering to his wife on a daily basis, being there to help her, and being there to be a blessing to her. This happens spiritually in 1 Corinthians 14:35, where the husband teaches his wife the Bible. I think it's a crying shame. It is a crying shame that many conservative families, that the person who's more spiritual is the wife, not the husband. Something wrong. Step up, men. Step up. Step up. To be there for your wife, ministering to her spiritually on a daily basis. I'm not a reader, Pastor. I'm just not much of a studier. In fact, I think I'd be the best for my wife if I just sat around and ate food. Listen, fella, I don't care if you're not a studier. I don't care if you read 3 words every 20 minutes. Get in the Word. Get in the Bible. You need to be a blessing to your wife. You need to have some knowledge, some depth, some wisdom in the Word of God. I'm just kind of country boy. We didn't do it. My daddy didn't do that. Well, maybe he should have. It needs to happen, this kind of daily ministering to our wife needs to happen verbally. As the Proverbs 31 husband did for his wife, to praise her. He praised her out loud. He said, Pastor, I got you. I did that just last week. I said, honey, this roast beef isn't near as burnt as it was last week. Praise her. Open praise her. It needs to happen understandingly. You need to be sanctifying or ministering to your wife. As in 1 Peter 3:7, where the husband dwells with his wife according to knowledge of knowing her. And fellas, if you've been married for 45 years, this verse doesn't change in your application to you. You need to keep on knowing her. Keep on learning her. Keep on, and I'll preach about this later, so I don't want to steal my thunder. Husbands, are you daily presently caring and ministering to your wife as Jesus does to His wife in verse 26. Christ's loving example goes on then to another point in verse 27, that He might present it, look at 27, that He might present it to Himself a glorious church, not having spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that it should be holy and without blemish. So ought men to love their wives. Okay, now listen, He's still preaching to you, husbands, about how you should take care of your wife in the future. Christ will fulfill some wonderful goals for His bride. She will be completed before Him in love, holy and without blemish in the future. I think about the love that we should have for our wives to make their futures bright and full of hope. There are some wives, frankly, that don't have a whole lot to live for. They are very discouraged because they're in a home situation where the husband is not an encourager. He is not a minister. She has nothing to look forward in the future, but more of the same. You should provide a bright future full of hope in your marriage and in your home, husbands. That could be applied to everything from financial security to helping them reach some of the dreams and aspirations of their childhood. Listen to me, men. Don't sleep. This is not the sermon to sleep on. I love you, but it's really not the sermon to sleep on. Listen to me. Listen here. Do you even know any of the dreams and aspirations that your wife used to have 20 years ago? 25 years ago? When she was a little girl? Hey, give your wife a bright future. Learn the aspirations and the dreams and realize it is a great thing to help your wife to live some of those wonderful dreams. I've told you before about a man that I knew that valued himself quite a bit. He had a nice vehicle. He had a pretty home. He spent lots of money on his own hobbies. He had been married many years, and he took me a tour of his beautiful home, including a beautiful leather recliner and a large screen television and a big garage and tons of brand new sporting equipment. And then we went down into his basement, where there against the wall I saw his wife's old, beat-up, broken-down piano. Now, what you need to know is that his wife was a highly gifted pianist. But he cared little for her. This man had spent thousands and thousands of dollars on sporting equipment for himself, but he cared little for the dreams and the talents and the abilities of his wife. I'm happy to say that that man has made that thing right. After many, many years, he's realized it. But men, what do you have planned in the future for your wife that shows your love to her the way Jesus has plans for His wife in the future? What bright spot do you have to show her how much you love her? Have you made provisions for her future, for instance, if you were not here? The point of verse 26 and 27 is still teaching husbands, as I told you. Verse 28 says, "So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself." See what all Jesus did for His bride, men, and love your wife like that. Sacrifice to do wonderful things and over-the-top kind of things for your wonderful woman. Don't make it all about yourself. Jesus didn't. Now, the Lord gets downright frank with us to make it clear. And sometimes you got to take a 2x4 in order to get people to learn something. Verse 28, "So ought men to love their wives as their own bodies. He that loveth his wife loveth himself. For no man yet hated his own flesh, but nourisheth it and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church." Again, He's talking to you husbands about what kind of husband He is. God says, love your wife like or as you love your body. You feed it, you pamper it, you rest it, you protect it, you treat yourself right. Husbands, we are so very self-oriented with our bodies. God says this, and this is very important to understand about how 27 connects to 28. He says, love your wife like you love your body, with the theology that you have been made one flesh. She is your body. This is what is going on here in the passage. Many of you have heard the object lesson that we are the body of Christ and that we are the bride of Christ. If you know that, say amen real loud. Okay. Do you know that those overlap? That is, we are the body of Christ as we are the wife of Christ. And God made your wife, hubbies, He made your wife one flesh with you. She is part of you. And so the way you treat her is the way you are treating your own body. And the way you neglect her is neglecting yourself. Strangely, he doesn't rebuke you, husbands, for loving your body. And in fact, he actually says a little tip to you at the end of verse number 28 that if you love your wife, it will reciprocate to more love for you anyway. Look at verse 28. It says, he that loveth his wife loveth himself. You want to make your own life better? Love your wife more. That's kind of a strange principle. It's good. It's good. It's the Word of God. Strangely, men don't get this. Men, let me give it to you this way. Our love to our wives is like a boomerang that returns just as strong as we throw it. Now, you give it a left-handed girl throw, and that love's not going to come back to you very strong. No offense, women. But I don't know what's broken about your arm. Have you ever seen a girl throw? I just do not get it. Something's not right. I mean, it's like a medical problem. It's like, unless you pitch fast pitch softball and then just get out of the way because that girl can throw. As hard as you throw your love towards your wife is as strong as it will come back towards you. This is true because we are one flesh, one body with our wives. She is part of us. If we treat our marriage of a one flesh body as well as we treat our own physical body, husbands, our marriage would be gluttonously wonderful and healthy and happy and pampered. If we would learn to treat our marriage and our wife as well as we treat ourselves. You're not stingy towards yourself. You know, you may act like you're sacrificing sometimes, but really in the deep motivations of the heart, isn't it, guys, usually that you're working out things to be better for yourself anyhow in the long run? Verse 29 is brutally true. God says, no man, no husband ever hated his own flesh. Look at there in your Bible. But nourisheth it. That is to feed it. He feeds it. He takes care of it. He cherisheth it, or he cherishes it. This word means to pamper it, to keep it warm. Now look at this. Even as the Lord, the church, the point comes right back around that you should take care of and cherish and pamper your wife, because that's the way Christ has already taken care of those that are saved. So won't you get on the bus of how to take care of a wife? That's what he's saying. I'm already. You know what Jesus is saying? I am already treating you as a Christian the way you're treating yourself in your marriage. You're taking care of yourself, whatever. I would that you would learn how to treat your wife with such cherishing and pampering and warming and all of that you treat yourself with. And by the way, Jesus says, I'm already treating every born-again believer that way. There's a great example in front of you how to treat your wife. Here's our example of how to love our wives, husbands. We need to love our wives the way Christ loves His wife. To neglect His bride, His church, would to be the hurting of Himself. For you to neglect your bride, to neglect your wife, is only going to hurt yourself. Don't do it. I want to read down through verse number 31, which is kind of the icing on the cake of the whole thing. I want to read 29 with it. For no man ever yet hateth his own flesh, but nourisheth and cherisheth it, even as the Lord the church. For we are members of His body. There it is. That's what he's saying. And your wife is a member of your one flesh with your wife, of His flesh, of His bones. For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall be joined to his wife, and they two shall be one flesh. There it is. She is one with you. Treat her that way. Treat her with such pampering and cherishing and nourishing that way. This is a great mystery. But I speak concerning Christ and the church. Nevertheless, let every one of you in particularly so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband. Here's the great truth. We need to love our wives because she is one with us. It is the great gospel in your marriage. She is our body. We are one flesh. To love her is to love yourself. To hurt her, to ignore her is to hurt yourself. And man, I want you to look at this Word of God and think about the incredible love that Jesus showed and is showing and will show for you, His bride, who have married Him by faith in His salvation. And then ask yourself this: how can I implement such love, such an example, such an illustration into loving my wife this kind of way, this lavish love kind of way that the Lord Jesus expresses, shows, and illustrates This is what it means to love your wife even as Christ, just like He's loving all true believers. There are at least four points there of how you can love your wife. Now, I shut my Bible up here, and I want the wives to bow their heads for just a moment. We're done. So wives, you bow your heads. We're going to have an eyeball to eyeball kind of landing in the invitation with the men here. It would be the greatest temptation for you to leave this place, guys. Look up here, guys. If I can just see you up here, guys. I'm going to see you up here. It would be the easiest thing for you to just leave this sermon and just say, yeah, that was kind of neat. Or, yeah, I tried to treat her nicely sometime. You need to come face to face with Jesus Christ and how He treats His wife right now. And you need to compare yourself to that. And honestly, every one of us falls greatly short. So if you have this idea, I've got it all covered what I just heard. Friend, listen. Let he that thinketh he standeth take heed lest he fall. Okay? My question is, what are you going to do about what you just heard? I mean, the first point is to get right with the Lord of that I have not been to my wife what Christ has been to the church, and to confess the sins of your negligence. And I want to encourage you. I want to invite and encourage all men that need to pray and deal with this, that they would come for the invitation time. But the question is, how are you going to plug in what you heard after that decision point? You need to meditate on how Christ loved His bride and decide you're going to love in these ways, giving Himself, sanctifying, providing for her future, joy in the home for the future, these things that we looked at, loving like you love yourself, like these things right from the text.